What would you think if I told you the very trait that makes a woman magnetic to emotionally unavailable men is also the trait that could destroy her? There is an archetype buried deep within the collective unconscious, a woman cloaked in mystery, in radiant contradiction. She is soft but immovable, loving but unyielding. She is not naive. She sees men clearly, even the broken ones, especially the broken ones. And still, she feels drawn to them, not because she needs to save them, but because part of her believes she can awaken them. Carl Jung called her the anima in form, the embodiment of the feminine image that lives inside every man's unconscious. But when she herself becomes too identified with this archetype, she forgets something crucial, that she is not his missing piece. She is her own whole. She doesn't chase him, no, but she mirrors something to him he cannot understand. She becomes the echo of the mother he never had, the warmth he never earned, the emotional depth he avoids yet craves. Her energy doesn't demand, it pulls. She walks into a room and his walls tremble, not because she's trying to tear them down, but because her presence reveals how fragile they really are. He is the emotionally unavailable man, the man of charm and control, of depthless conversations and detoured glances. He may even speak the language of healing, of consciousness, of doing the work. But when it comes to intimacy, he vanishes into abstraction. And still, he cannot resist her. Why? Because this archetypal woman evokes what he's buried. She doesn't flatter his ego. She bypasses it. She doesn't demand vulnerability. She evokes it. And for the first time in a long time, perhaps ever, he feels seen. Not for who he pretends to be, but for the boy still hiding behind the mask of self-protection. She, unknowingly, activates his psychic chaos, not because she wants to, but because she is. She has done her shadow work, or at least enough to hold space for his rage, his silence, his coldness, not because she deserves those things, but because she's learned how to transmute pain into compassion. And that energy, unconditional yet sovereign, becomes intoxicating to the man who has only ever known love as performance. You may know this archetype already. You may be her. The woman who holds depth like a secret, who attracts men with impossible wounds, the woman whose empathy becomes her currency, the woman who knows how to feel for two, think for two, hope for two. And at first she feels powerful, she feels chosen, she feels like she has finally become the one, the only woman who could make him feel. But over time, the same man who was obsessed with her soul will begin to retreat. Not because she's too much, but because he cannot handle the reflection she offers. This is the curse of the archetype. She becomes irresistible to men who cannot hold her, not because she is broken, but because she is complete in ways they've never dared to become. And still, she stays, for a while, because somewhere in her shadow lives the story that if she's just patient enough, soft enough, understanding enough, he will rise. But this belief is not love, it is an inheritance, passed down by generations of women taught to carry what was never theirs. It is the echo of martyrdom dressed in divinity. And until she sees this, until she separates the archetype from her identity, she will continue to attract men who want to taste her soul but will choke when it's time to hold it. There comes a moment, quiet, usually like a breath that's been held too long, when she realizes the truth. Her depth does not fix him. Her love does not open him. Her presence, though unforgettable, is not a key to a door he has nailed shut from the inside. And still he lingers. Emotionally unavailable men are not always cruel. Often they are gentle, attentive in moments, even self-aware. That is part of what makes the archetype feel so alive. He teases potential. He shows flashes of the man he could be, just enough to keep her orbiting the possibility of transformation. He praises her intuition. He calls her different. He looks at her like she's a mirror to his higher self, and for a moment she believes it too. But this is where Jung's wisdom cuts through illusion like a knife. The emotionally unavailable man is not drawn to her because he's ready to evolve. He's drawn to her because his soul recognizes what it cannot yet embody. He is not seeking partnership. He is seeking proximity to healing without taking the medicine himself. And she, radiant, empathic, sovereign in her tenderness, becomes that medicine. But healing by proxy is not healing. It's hunger. And eventually she will feel it, the ache of being devoured by a man who calls her goddess while never stepping into godhood himself. You must understand this. There is a difference between being magnetic and being nourished. You can be worshipped for your light and still be left in the dark. You can be desired endlessly by the broken masculine and never be held in safety. Because to the emotionally unavailable man, the anima is not real. She is an image, a projection, a portal he glimpses but never enters. He chases her essence and avoids her reality. He loves the idea of her but cannot face the raw human presence of her. This is where the story splits. Some women, upon seeing this pattern, try to dim themselves. They reduce their light to match his comfort zone. They abandon their emotional truth in exchange for proximity. They try to become more relatable, less intense, more patient. But this betrayal of self does not keep him close. It only dissolves the very essence he fell in love with. Others, fewer but rising, make a different choice. They begin the deeper work of separation, not from him, but from the archetype itself. They recognize that being the muse, the mirror, the emotional alchemist is not the same as being loved. They realize that being the one he never forgets is a beautiful tragedy, not a triumph. They stop living inside the projection and step back into their body, their real body. The body that remembers what safety feels like. The body that doesn't light itself on fire to warm someone who flinches at every flicker of flame. And in that reclamation, something miraculous happens. She becomes untouchable, not because she is guarded, but because she is disciplined. Her energy, once scattered in trying to be enough for a man who feared depth, becomes focused, contained, potent. And it is here, only here, that she begins to attract something different. Not the emotionally unavailable, but the emotionally mature. Not the man who worships her from a distance, but the one who walks toward her with his eyes open and his shadow in check. Because she is no longer repeating the myth, she is rewriting it. She no longer needs to be the archetype to be seen. She no longer performs the sacred role of the one who awakens him. That story, while seductive, is rooted in self-abandonment. It teaches women to become the gateway for a man's potential while quietly exiling their own peace. Now she chooses herself, not as a concept, not as a buzzword, but as a lived reality. This shift is internal, invisible at first, but it ripples. She begins to feel the weight of her intuition in her chest and honors it without debate. She no longer explains away the red flags because she's no longer trying to outlove them. She sees avoidance, projection, emotional shutdown, and instead of rising to meet it with over-functioning empathy, she pauses. Because something inside her has changed. She no longer trades her feminine depth for a chance to be needed. Jung taught us that the archetypes are not roles to live within, they are forces to integrate and transcend. When a woman lives too long as the anima incarnate, she becomes a magnet for men who mistake her presence for therapy, her affection for healing, her softness for salvation. But she was never meant to be a symbol, she was meant to be a sovereign. And sovereignty looks like this. No more chasing closure from unavailable men. No more decoding mixed signals. No more becoming the therapist, the motivator, the muse. She is no longer enticed by emotional starvation, dressed as mystery. Instead, she learns to sit with her own longing, not as a signal to pursue a man, but as a portal back into herself. Because the need to be needed, that's a wound too, one inherited from generations of women who were told that their power came from being chosen, that their worth lived in their ability to inspire transformation in others. But the empowered feminine no longer builds temples for men who will not kneel. She builds altars within herself. This is not detachment. This is not coldness. This is reclamation. And it's magnetic in a different way, no longer a soft, sweet pull that soothes the unhealed masculine. Now it's a gravity, steady, rooted, electric, the kind that draws in only those who have done the sacred labor of facing themselves. Because this version of her does not soothe the man who cannot sit with silence, she does not entertain the one who says all the right things but collapses in the face of intimacy. She is not available to men who see her as an experience rather than a human being. She is no longer irresistible to emotionally unavailable men. She is invisible to them, not because she's hiding, but because her frequency no longer echoes their dysfunction. They cannot find her in the shadows of their own chaos anymore. She's no longer holding the candle at the cave's entrance. She's gone, ascended, reborn, And now, only the man who has faced his own inner feminine, his wounds, his mother, his ego, only he can feel her. Only he can step toward her without needing to be saved. And when he does, there is no chase, there is no performance, there is only recognition. Two souls fully formed, meeting not in fantasy but in truth. She no longer vibrates with urgency. There is no desperation in her eyes. Her stillness speaks louder than her stories ever did, and the men who once fed on her openness now find themselves disoriented, unable to access her. What once made her irresistible to the emotionally unavailable is now what shields her from them entirely. She has closed the circuit, not in bitterness but in reverence for herself. And in that quiet, spacious place where she used to fold into others' wounds, she now builds rituals, boundaries, a sacred architecture of self-respect. She drinks from her own cup and lets it overflow, not toward a man who refuses to rise, but into the soil of her own becoming. This is not the version of her who clung to potential. This is the woman who chooses reality and makes it beautiful. Jung said that individuation is not perfection, it's integration. She has integrated the archetype. She no longer confuses emotional labor for love. She no longer believes her role is to crack open a closed heart. That was never her job. Her only task now is to remain fully herself in a world that constantly begs her to fragment. And the emotionally unavailable man, he still feels her. He feels her absence like a sacred echo. He remembers the light he once basked in, but now it burns, not because she's cruel, but because she's gone. He can no longer find himself in her softness. He must now confront the space she used to fill, the silence where her devotion once lived. This is karma, not as punishment, but as mirror. The same energy that made her magnetic now returns to her in wholeness, no longer dispersed, no longer drained. She reclaims it, and with it calls in something new. He is not flashy, not charming in the way she used to crave, but he is present. He does not flinch in the face of depth. He does not require translation. He does not mistake her sovereignty for threat. He comes not to be fixed, but to walk beside her. And when he meets her, he does not fall in love with the archetype. He falls in love with the woman, wild, real, layered, with the parts of her that are divine and the parts still healing, with the part of her that no longer shines for attention, but radiates because she knows who she is. This love is not a climax, it is a coming home, a place where her emotional wisdom is no longer exotic but understood, a place where her silence is not feared but held, a place where she is not pedestalized but met. Because she has done the work. She has walked through the fire of codependent fantasy and emerged with her crown intact. And now, only those who carry water from their own wells may drink from hers. This is the ultimate transformation, not of the man but of the self. No longer the muse for men who run from love. Now the woman who chooses it, when it's safe, when it's sovereign, when it's real. And in that sacred choosing, she becomes something more powerful than irresistible. She becomes unavailable to anything less than truth.